Okay, welcome and thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Dr. Crystal Socha. I'm joined by my colleague, Dr. Joni Dolce, and we are covering for Earl Leach, your fearless leader typically. So we thank you for being here for chapter 5. If this is your first time or your fifth time, thank you so much for participating with us. Today's Buried in Treasures chapter is titled Meet the Good Guys, Strategies for Beating Hoarding. Before we get into some of this really great information, we're going to cover a few housekeeping items, but just want to recognize this chapter is really all about introducing some of those tools that we can use to help people reduce some of their hoarding or cluttering behaviors and help them recognize some of those habits that are getting in the way and how to support them in moving forward. Again, welcome. Today's meeting is hosted by DBHR through the Washington State Healthcare Authority. This is an interactive meeting, and we do encourage you to ask questions and participate throughout this session. The slides and recording will be sent by email and will also be shared with you in the chat. So we will share that PowerPoint presentation so you can follow along. My colleague here has placed that in the chat. If there's any questions, again, please don't hesitate to reach out to us or ask questions. A note about artificial intelligence. Please note that the use of automated note-taking bots or similar tools during Washington FCS events or meetings requires prior approval. Unauthorized use of such tools is prohibited to ensure the privacy and confidentiality of all attendees. Also, any recording that is created through AI is not recognized as an official recording of this session. We reserve the right to exit trainees from the training if they are using AI to take notes without prior approval or using AI to record the session. Again, another note about our materials and recordings. They will be uploaded in the chat. So my apologies, I added an extra bit of information earlier. You will see that our PowerPoint PDF version is shared in the chat. If you need it again, and maybe you're joining at some point, we will make sure to share that with you once more. Okay, so we are taking a look at our learning community meeting schedule. Where are we? We are in December. So we're, again, about quarter of the way, almost halfway through some of our learning community sessions. And again, we are in chapter 5. We do mirror the book Buried in Treasures and not mandatory that you have read it prior to, but can be helpful in kind of putting things alongside of each other. Okay. Before we jump into our review, just want to get a sense of how's everyone doing today? If you could let us know. We've got 40 something of you here so far. Some others will probably be trickling in. Let us know how you're doing in the chat before we get started, and maybe letting us know if you've been here before, if this is your first time. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Wet, rainy, and windy here. In New Jersey, it's cold, cold and cold. Hanging in there, holiday season is rough. Yeah. We appreciate you making it, especially during a busy holiday season. Thanks for returning. Thanks for being here for the first or second time. A little tired today. Gloomy weather. Ready for a break next week. Yeah. I hope we are all taking the needed break if possible. Awesome. Good first time. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. You will see Earl is typically, again, Earl Leach is typically spearheading our Buried in Treasures session. So you will see Earl Leach next time, and I will be his backup dancer behind the scenes navigating the chat. But today you'll have myself and Dr. Joni Dolce. So again, thank you, thank you, thank you for being here. Lots of rain. No rain here, but I think it's coming our way too. All right. So we're going to take a moment to review. For those of you who maybe are joining for the first time, this might not necessarily apply, but we want to take a moment to reflect on what we covered last time. So last time we covered chapter 4, which was the bad guys, and not necessarily bad inherently, but bad guys are referred to those psychological factors that impede efforts to address hoarding. So think about those strong emotional attachments to an item. Think about maybe for yourself or someone that you're working with, a loved one, a family member who is saying, I might need this someday. So just in case, I'm going to save it here. Or, getting rid of this would be a waste. I just can't do that. I have to keep it. So the bad guys are some of those like thoughts, feelings, behaviors that get in the way. And oftentimes we talk about some self-assessments. So last time we shared a handful of different self-assessments to determine someone's readiness to change. So gauging their stage of change, whether they have any thoughts, feelings that are getting in the way, their confidence, maybe their ambivalence or not quite ready to make that change just yet. And so we had asked you, for those of you who may have been here before, to try or share some of those self-assessments for those bad guys last week. Was anyone able to practice or use some of those self-assessments that we might have shared? Just a yes or no in the chat, and if so, let us know a little more if you did. I see some yeses. Dawn, I think I saw that you were unmuted if you were looking to add something. Of course, yeah. However you practice those self-assessments, whether for yourself, whether with a person that you are working with, whether for friend, loved one, family member, we have to practice in some ways. So those assessments can be helpful to really learn how to use first before teaching it to someone else. Yes, we can share those assessments. Let me see if I'm going to stop sharing my screen briefly here. See if I can copy. Okay, so all of those handouts actually go to the same place. So you should be able to see them there. If not, we'll make sure to be sure that you have copies of those. Okay. If you haven't, again, no worries. We wanted to share those. There's a handful of handouts that you'll see, so more to come. But for those that maybe weren't here before, no worries. We're going to continue with another piece for today. So today we are talking again about specific techniques, so those good guys, those pieces of behavioral change that support someone in navigating hoarding. We're also going to help identify the roles that staff or loved ones can play in supporting the good guys or those pieces or tools or skills to support someone. And then we're going to outline some steps to develop a progressive practice schedule for sorting and non-acquiring, which we'll get to in just a moment. So we're going to start with some of our primary elements, which are included in this Buried in Treasures book. And so it's often split up into two areas, sorting and discarding and non-acquiring. So sorting includes, sometimes we are taking a lot of time to go through our possessions slowly. Sometimes people, there might be the idea that you have to be like a perfect organizer, that you have to have a natural organizing talent. And so sometimes when we think about one of those first steps to navigating hoarding is sorting. So you'll see this image on the side of maybe a specific individual's way of sorting and letting go of some items. But it's a process. It's not a one-time event. So many people try to sort too quickly or all at once, which leads to a lot of overwhelm or avoidance. But sometimes this is even about sorting or going through a small area of the room. It could look like going through one box in the room. It could look like going through one pile in the room. So sometimes the people that we're working with are like, oh my gosh, where do I begin? I have so many items, and maybe I'm not quite ready yet. Maybe I'm still exploring, like, I would be okay with starting at my kitchen table, but I'm not quite ready, for you to get into my bedroom space. But a lot of this process is understanding. So when we're helping someone sort and discard, what we're doing is supporting them in learning about themselves. So asking, what are some of the certain items that might be hard to let go of? What are some of those thoughts that come up as we even talk about sorting or discarding? What are some of those emotional reactions? So, thinking about maybe someone you're working with, or again, yourself or a loved one, what are some of those thoughts that make it difficult to sort or discard an item? What if I need this? Yeah, that's a pretty common thought. What if I need this? Someone I care about gave this to me. Yeah. Earl in the earlier sessions talked a little bit about some of that sentimental value to items, which makes it even more difficult to let go of. Emotional attachment, don't want it to be wasted.
Someone mentioned, I'll never have another like this, even if they have a few of them.
Yeah, thank you. Right, this is the most special one. I don't know if I can ever find one just like this one, even if I have multiple of them. Something about this one is really important and has so much history. Yeah, great. Right, maybe this represents who I am. This cost a lot of money, so I don't want to throw it out. I don't want to waste it. What about some of those emotions underneath that? What do you think are some of the emotional reactions when someone's having thoughts like this? Yeah, I have plans for that. What about the emotions? What feelings come up as someone might consider sorting or discarding? Anxiety, loss. Yeah, a lot of the work that we do really is grief work. We're navigating someone's really important and precious items, and what would it look like to get rid of those items? What part of you are you losing if we are removing or sorting or discarding this item? For some people, maybe it's guilt or sadness. Maybe there's a sense of comfort to some of these items, so fear that things might just go away.
Insecurity, someone mentioned, or feelings of lack and I can't afford to get rid of it.
Yeah, right. Hmm. Mourning the things they can't do anymore. Yeah, and there's, we talked about earlier in our sessions, like there is a variety of types of possessions, whether it's sentimental in nature, whether this is a one-of-a-kind item, whether this is an item that carries much history or a memory. It can be really challenging to simply just say, well, let's throw it out. And so our goal is not to support someone in that, but helping them understand the thoughts and feelings behind the idea of sorting and discarding. Even the conversation brings up a lot for them. So keeping that in mind. So really taking some time to sort slowly with someone, and recognizing that discarding an item is a skill in itself and it improves with repetition. Yeah, I know this will be worth something someday. Oh my gosh, I remember saving Beanie Babies that I've had, or Furbies in their box still, even though I'm like really scared of it. I just think like this is gonna hold some value someday. I know it. So let me not touch it. I'm gonna make sure that I dust it off and I'm gonna put it somewhere safe. Um, have I given it up? No. But I know that maybe, yeah, same thought. It could be worth something someday. Yeah. The other piece is then, again, helping someone understand their why with their values. Like sorting and discarding is all about understanding what this person truly values. We might go into someone's home and have our own assumptions of the way that they keep their home tidy or not. And there's a lot of, someone mentioned history in the spaces, and there's so much privilege to be able to go into someone's home and recognize, wow, like these are items that you've kept all this time. These are some things that maybe you save out of fear rather than usefulness. Like maybe this person is afraid, they'll never have something like this again, or what might happen if they lose their housing, or how these thoughts, feelings, behaviors might drive the idea of letting something go. The other part is then the non-acquiring. So, really working on mastering the urge to acquire things you can't afford or don't have space or time to use effectively. So, this can be such a challenge because non-acquiring is just as important as discarding. Without it, we know clutter will return. So sometimes this is, again, understanding this acquiring behavior. What is this person doing? Where are they finding these items? Are they buying items? Are they accepting free items? Is someone next door saying, I have to get rid of these? Is neighbors throwing stuff out and they're saying, ooh, this looks like something I could save? Yeah, not acquiring free items. Yeah. I mean, I am so guilty of every time I go to a conference, you see multiple different tables with pens and little notebooks and highlighters and a new hand sanitizer. And I'm like, I'm gonna need that one day. So I will pick it up, take my little tote bag with me, and then I start to have maybe multiple items in this bag. Maybe I put it in a drawer and I don't actually use it. But I know that in that moment, I'm gonna take this free item. Why not? But exactly, yeah, that is definitely a huge acquiring behavior or just picking it up just in case. And so oftentimes it's not really just about the item, it's the emotion tied to the item. And so helping someone recognize like those urges will rise and fall like waves. And it can be helpful to talk to someone about what it means to really ride that wave of the emotion. They might not need to act on that feeling. And then that feeling might pass even after just a little bit. Yeah, seems like there's an affordable thrill, feeling of luxury by acquiring cheap items from Temu or Amazon. Yeah, there's a quick, there's a quick need for it. And we live in the era of you can buy something with the click of a finger or a button. But yeah, non-acquiring is just another active skill in itself. So helping the person that you're working with identify what are some of those emotional triggers that come up. Oh yeah, dopamine rush, ownership. Maybe this person has a small set of items that are really truly theirs. Think about the first time that maybe you've worked with someone. I remember working with someone who said, like, this is my first bedroom. Like, this is my first set of keys to my own place. This is my first tiny space. And so, really recognizing the feelings that come up with that and what it means to keep items in that space and what it means to continue to purchase items, perhaps. So, we say this, the second bullet here is find other enjoyable activities. So, to really reduce acquiring, pleasure and comfort must come from other sources. So, what are some things that maybe the people you're working with like to do for fun? I'm saying that with it's of course not going to replace a behavior right away, but what else can they do to find maybe that dopamine rush? What else can they do to find joy? What are some things that you all do to find pleasure and comfort? take walks, exercise, social gatherings, crafting. I'm big on crafting, yeah, connecting with friends, reading. And you're right, yeah, something other than crafting because that will encourage more shopping, which is so funny you say that because I was about to share my new craft, which is I've been knitting hats on this like circle loom. Best hobby I've ever found. But did I buy 10 different rolls of yarn? Yeah, of course I did. Painting, gardening, walks, reading, listening to music, writing, baking. Yeah. So recognizing that it might be helpful to take some time to really explore with someone. What are some things that you like to do with your time? What are some other things that bring you joy? Social poverty is so real. I actually really love that expression. Yeah. Making connections based on shared interests is important. Absolutely. We are human beings who really yearn for connection. We need to connect with others to survive. Playing games together, plans, but that leads to buying unless you trade. And I see the caveat here, like there's a fine line between like, am I doing these things out of finding a new way to hoard or clutter items, or am I doing this because it really is relaxing, or am I doing this because it's something different? So maybe helping the person you're working with recognize what is the purpose or function of that behavior and how is it meeting those emotional needs? Okay. So we're going to talk about the good guys again. Those good guys are all of those positive or helpful adaptive habits for navigating hoarding behaviors. These are all six of them, and we're going to go through them on the next slide. But I just want to recognize that progress comes from practice, not insight alone. So you might have, or someone that you're working with might have the awareness of maybe you've gotten them to a place of feeling motivated, ready, and committed to making that change. They've built some insight around their behaviors. Maybe they're recognizing that perhaps there could be a risk of fire in the home or there's no way to exit, or perhaps, they are running out of finances or whatever that might look like. You've kind of established that, yeah, this person is ready to make that change, but it doesn't come from insight by itself. And we know that discomfort is expected and temporary. Think about all the times you might have felt uncomfortable in your life. You probably don't feel uncomfortable forever, maybe in different bursts and bits. But there's a time where that discomfort lessens or the intensity reduces. So these are our six good guys. Eyes on the prize, downward arrow, thinking it through, testing it out, developing the right skills, and using your practice muscle daily. So I'm gonna go into detail on the next slides here. Keeping your eyes on the prize. So what does that mean? So keeping your eyes on the prize is a strategy all about keeping the costs, or um, what's contributing to my hoarding or cluttering behaviors. Oftentimes, we're talking about how we can continue to keep our awareness of the problem, helping the person you're working with be really aware of their goals and values. Maybe it's about having conversations or recognizing, and not in a shaming way, but asking, or exploring how does clutter interfere with your life, or how is it getting in the way of things that you want to do? What do you want your space and life to look like? What would you gain by changing, and what would you lose by giving up all these things? Again, there's a lot of loss in that. So, the purpose of this piece is keeping motivation alive, especially when letting go or discarding items feels really hard. So, I love these images. These slides were adapted by Earl. But I'm almost imagining, when a dog has a treat and what that looks like, keeping your eyes on the prize of how can this person make sure that they are moving towards the direction of their goals. There's, of course, going to be hiccups on the way. There's going to be things that make it difficult to discard. Let's say they want to discard one item a day. Maybe things don't go as planned and something comes up. But again, a lot of it is helping this person identify how they can celebrate some of these things that they own and maybe using their possessions as intended to achieve their goal. Thinking about maybe someone that you're working with or for yourself, what is an item you would like to use but can't? Maybe it's something that you've saved and realized you haven't used it or someone hasn't used it. What are some of those items that maybe due to cluttering things are blocking it? For example, I actually have a second desk over here, which was originally my first desk. And this desk over here is now a bookshelf. It's not a writing desk, which I wanted to be able to like spin around and have more space. But I noticed that I can't actually use this desk how it's intended because I've decided to put all my books on it. I've put some plants on it. And so sometimes it's helping a person recognize, like, is there something in your home that you want to use but haven't been able to use it? Think about a stove. Think about um, maybe an oven. Maybe this person is storing items in their oven or things on top of the stove. So exploring with them those questions can help really identify, like, what do they really value and how has some of their cluttering behavior gotten in the way of using those items? The second good guy is that downward arrow. So this is really a tool or a strategy to help the person that you're working with identify and challenge those beliefs. So let me just click through here. This includes helping a person really uncover their core beliefs about acquiring an item that continues to drive cluttering or hoarding behaviors. So you might help this person by selecting items that they don't want to discard or don't want to acquire or want to acquire but shouldn't. Help them to identify what do you think might happen if you discard this item or don't acquire this new item. So again, kind of keeping both of those categories in mind, the sorting and discarding and the non-acquiring. What might happen if you discard this item? Or what might happen if you don't acquire a new item? And the person might say, well, if I waste something, then I'm irresponsible. Or if I let this go, I lose part of myself. Or maybe making the wrong choice would be unbearable. I'm not someone who makes wrong choices, and letting go of something means I'm making a bad choice. So helping them to explore what would be so bad if, or if that were true, what would that mean or say about you? Maybe what's the story that you're telling yourself around this item? And helping this person to continue identifying and questioning. And it can help to like continually and repeatedly ask, like, if that were true, what would it mean? What would it say about you? To really get to the heart of this last piece here of what are you truly afraid of and what do you truly believe about yourself? Again, this helps the person to see that hoarding and cluttering is really driven by values and beliefs, not objects themselves. There's a lot of emotional connection or attachment. And so someone might feel stuck, and maybe it's difficult to think about discarding or not acquiring an item. Maybe they're feeling anxious or worried. And so it's helping them explore, what would be so bad about letting go of this item? What might happen if you don't acquire? What would happen if you went to the store tomorrow knowing you have to get your groceries, but maybe there's an aisle that you love to go down and it has, I don't know, all your favorite games and puzzles. If I went down the yarn aisle, I'd be picking up a few bundles of yarn. What would happen if you didn't acquire an item? And then helping this person identify it. And again, a lot of this is helping them, one, recognize those thoughts, and then two, challenge the beliefs that they have about themselves. The next piece here is thinking it through. So this can be helpful, especially when we recognize that, let me click through these. Hoarding or cluttering comes from sometimes an automatic thought, feeling leads to that behavior. Sometimes it's connected to a deep emotion. And so it's really helping this person identify and talk through their decisions. So you might ask them questions as they're thinking through whether they should keep or discard an item. How many of these do I have? How many would be enough? I have a collection of vintage and antique glass bunnies that I love so much. They're over there on the other side. So when I'm sitting at my desk and looking at them, I'm like, oh, I love them so much. How many would be enough? It looks like you've got every color here, Crystal. Yeah, I sure do. And so helping this person identify how many of these do you have and when would it be enough? Maybe there isn't a limit. Maybe the limit does not exist. Do I have a specific plan to use these items within a reasonable time frame? And reasonable depends on the person because someone might say, well, think about we're going to get through holidays and maybe I'll use it next year or I'll start using this item next year and once the new year hits, that's my time frame. But maybe how do you make sure that this person really sets that boundary or limit? Have I used this in the past year? That can be a really great question, especially think about when we are sorting and discarding clothing items. Have I worn this in the past year? Do I remember the last time I might have taken it off the hanger? Is this of good quality? And that's a tough and again, individualized question because quality to me might be different than to another person. Do I really need it? And this is an even harder one. How do I really know if I need it? I could say that I really want it. I really love to look at my glass bunnies. Do I really need it? Maybe not, but adds a little bit of ambiance in my room. What are some other questions that you think would be helpful to ask someone who's thinking it through whether they should or should not discard an item? Ooh, I like that one. Is this representative of me? Representative of me? Is this comfortable? That's a good one for clothing too. I love that. Would someone else like it as much as I do? Can I give it to them? Oh, what might it be like to share this with someone else? Could they value it as much as I do? Is it covered in dust? The good old dust check might tell you enough. It's probably been sitting there for a little bit. Yeah. And these are great questions again to help ask a person that you're working with from a non-judgmental, again, non-shaming place. Does this fit me? Yeah. Has its meaning and purpose diminished or changed over time? Yeah, maybe when I bought it originally, I thought, I'm gonna make something of this, or it means a lot to me. And now I've I recognize that my values have changed over time. Oh, will this item be ruined by being in storage or being unused? And that's such a good one too, because sometimes the people we're working with may not necessarily have a place to move items or store items to. Yeah, mattress on a porch outside. It's getting ruined by the rain and snow and wind and anything else outdoors. Right. And so if I know that, then I know that I probably won't be able to sleep on this mattress anymore. And so really considering the realistic likelihood of future use and what are the costs of keeping them. So the cost is I'm taking up 5 feet of my space here and I could have more room to walk around. Or it's causing me a lot of stress, or it's unsafe because it's getting pretty close to, I don't know, my smoke detector, or it's kind of tipping over. It looks like it might fall. Is the presence of this item sitting unused making me depressed? Like clothes that don't fit? Yeah. I'm a big believer. I do a lot of work with clients who have eating disorders and disordered eating behaviors as well. And a lot of it is that exactly. Like, is keeping this, holding on to the grief of what I used to look like, who I used to be, if that's the case, and recognizing like my body may have changed, and so those clothes don't fit me anymore, and that's okay. Holiday candles in the attic that got over 120. Oh my gosh, yeah. Melted candles. But I hear you, I do love a good candle. Financial costs, especially if you have to pay for storage, right? So is it realistic that this person can carry these items with them to their next place? Do they have the finances for storage? Are there any other alternatives? Like, could this person take photos of their space? Could this person um, have some additional, even like memories? Could they write it in a journal? Yeah, can someone cherish this item more and free up more of my time and space and mental energy for other important things, right? So, a lot of the purpose of this, again, helping someone think it through is replacing some of that emotional decision making with thoughtful, balanced choices. It could help to have them, write these things down, say them out loud with you. Again, a lot of this is really helping them understand that emotional attachment or that kind of automatic process that happens. Great. Okay. The next one is testing it out. So this is all about kind of helping someone maybe debunk some of the thoughts that are in their head. It's almost like running an experiment to see if their thoughts are true, false, or partially true. Once you get this handout or in the PDF, you should be able to click each of these and you'll see it goes right to the book worksheets. All of those worksheets are in the same spot. So this can be helpful, especially when working with someone to identify almost what someone who maybe practices a little bit of cognitive behavioral work calls magical thinking. So it's the prediction of if this, then that. If I throw this item away, then I'll regret it forever. If I don't buy this item now, then I'll never find another one like it. If um, I decide to let go of these items, then I'm wasting all my money. So helping them to really identify those predictions, those thoughts that are kind of stuck in the if this happens, then that happens. Then have them test it out. Let's say this person does discard the item, and then maybe you want to have them pay attention to their feelings for the next 24 hours. So, what's going on in your body? How are you feeling knowing that you've discarded this item? What's happening for you? and then see what really happened. So maybe someone saying, when I threw out this item, I had a little bit of anxiety, but by the evening I felt better because I had a little extra space on my nightstand. Or the next day, I was still feeling really anxious and I kept thinking about the item and I really almost wanted to take it out of the trash. And I knew that it's okay and this feeling is going to pass. Then helping them revise their thought and identify a new conclusion. So maybe this person is saying, I can handle feeling uncomfortable or bad or stressed or anxious or worried. And I know that this feeling won't last forever. I'm more resilient than I thought. What's another new thought that you can help someone identify, almost like supporting them with an affirmation? How might you help them revise their thought? And I will say some of this is might come from us too, as people working with people. We might be their cheerleader or person who's encouraging them. What might you say to encourage them? Yeah, maybe recognizing I didn't really need that. It was really hard to let it go, and I knew I didn't really need that item. What else? What are some other thoughts or affirmations that you might tell someone? Yeah, celebrating those small victories, reaffirming their courage and discarding, giving away, letting go. Yeah, even if it's one item, we really want to provide a little bit of praise or positive reinforcement, affirmation, letting them know you recognize this really hard thing that they did. And we see that strength and resilience in them. We know that that must have been really difficult. You've never thrown out an item before, and I know how hard that was. I just want to take a moment and recognize that for you. That was a really amazing thing that you did. And celebrating small victories really is that. It's all about how can I provide this momentary 1 second sentence to someone so that they can then say these things to themselves too. So they might not initially have some of these thoughts, but we want to support them in identifying those thoughts too. Okay. Always let them know you see them and know how hard it must have been and how great they're doing. Yeah, a lot of our work is all about validation, encouragement, support. So helping to recognize with this person, I see you. I see what you're doing. Last month or even last year, you couldn't even handle the idea of having a conversation about letting go of these items. And today you let go of one. Today you were able to discard one. Today you threw one out. Today you gave one to a friend. Today you, whatever it might be, we are really taking the time to recognize how difficult that was for someone and encourage them to continue to do more. Okay.
We have a question here in the chat
Yeah.
that's asking, I work with someone who has OCD and can get into a very severe thinking cycle. What would be a good way to reframe the repeating thoughts about not having the items anymore?
Great question. And sometimes we have to be mindful of affirming someone's thoughts if they are someone who struggles with OCD. I think what's been helpful when working with clients who do, let's just say, generally have OCD, a lot of it is like the maybe, maybe not. Maybe I'll feel really horrible and maybe I won't. Maybe I'll feel really anxious and maybe I won't. And so letting them sit with the dialectic of both, how can I recognize that I might have a lot of anxiety about not having this item anymore and I might not. And so rather than sometimes as providers, we get stuck into the reassurance providing because clients with OCD might be engaging in those reassurance seeking behaviors from us. And so sometimes it's helpful to hold both. Like, yeah, I'm hearing that you might feel really worried about not having these items anymore. And maybe you'll feel okay. We don't know until we try. So helping this person sit with the idea of both. How can I recognize that I am feeling very anxious and I might be okay in a little bit and I might not be okay and I'll be sure to support myself through that. I know that that feeling isn't going to last forever and that feeling will eventually pass, but if I could sit with the distress, a lot of again working with someone who has OCD or intrusive thoughts is helping them to tolerate the distress and discomfort. And this is a huge distressing task. This is not an easy thing. I love the response too. Allow them to talk it out. Allow them to see a benefit. You can play a game of peekaboo to speak, so to speak, with that item and see how that might work. Appreciate that suggestion. Yeah. Are there any other thoughts or feedback regarding the question? That's a great one. I will say one final thought. A lot of work with OCD is about like small exposures. So how can I like the idea of a peekaboo. Like, what would it look like to move this item even closer to the trash? What would it look like to move it into another room? What would it look like to get it closer to the door, which means closer to the garbage, which means closer to maybe they're giving it to a friend, whatever that looks like. But breaking that down strategically and thoughtfully, we know that it's not going to be as simple as taking an item and throwing it out. It's just not that simple. And so helping this person sit with the discomfort of, I might feel really worried and anxious about not having this item anymore, and I might not feel really worried and anxious. I might feel okay. I might be able to tolerate the distress. I might be able to get through it. Thank you for that. I hope that helps a bit. With our next one, we have what's called developing the right skills. And so this is beyond not acquiring or discarding, which will be discussed in the future, but we want to talk about what it might look like to help someone with organizing. Again, organizing is not necessarily a genetic trait, while some people might find excitement or joy in the idea of organizing. It doesn't mean that you have to be a natural born organizer to be able to sort items. So this is helping someone recognize that sometimes things might feel really messy and chaotic. And sometimes we might mix things up. We might have our, really important mail mixed up with our junk mail, mixed up with, our birth certificate, mixed up with our other items. But we want to help this person to find meaningful ways to be able to organize in a way that works for them. And sometimes it's helpful to maybe think about what that might look like. Sometimes organizing, there's so many, like Netflix TV shows now about organizing, and people buy boxes and have nice sorted, different pieces of furniture, but it doesn't have to be that. And so sometimes it's, recognizing that there might be another place for it. What might it look like if we, even sorted our mail that's sitting on our table and just put them in different piles? Maybe we're We're noticing we've got a lot of junk mail or spam mail. We've got mail that's coming from Social Security. We've got mail that's coming from maybe our housing agency. We've got mail
Housing
that's
agency, we've got mail that's
just heard an echo. If there's a question, let me know. Um, I scared myself there with my own voice echoing. But if there's a question, don't hesitate to ask. So, a lot of this again is helping this person to identify some strategies for themselves that work. Sorry about that. Um, the other piece is helping them problem solve. So, oftentimes it's hard to know where to begin. Think about someone who is already struggling, probably with layers of trauma, mental health conditions, navigating what it means to even think about sorting and discarding. And so it's hard to know where to begin. So helping this person really build problem-solving strategies to help them know where to start. Maybe it's about having a conversation of, um, I might create or I might provide some education about a sorting system. I might not have so many categories. I was just giving an example of mail. So maybe I'll just have regular mail and spam mail. Maybe I won't have seven different categories. Maybe it's finding ways to prevent pileups. If I know that maybe the person I'm working with is piling items so high that it's making it difficult to exit and enter their home, how can we identify ways to move these items or sort them in a different way? Again, it doesn't have to be getting rid of everything all at once. It doesn't have to be moving items into another home right away. The emphasis is really on the function of this item and how can it be more functional, not striving for perfection. What are some things that maybe you've done to work with clients, friends, self, loved ones, to maybe organize some of their items or to begin having a conversation about problem solving, where to start, thinking about the homes that someone might live in. It's hard to think about, oh my gosh, I have my bedroom, my living room, my kitchen, and my bathroom. Where am I supposed to start? What have you done that's worked? I see the comment. I sometimes get frustrated in my own life with organizing because it feels like I'm spending so much time maintaining all of my things. It's somewhat motivating to get rid of more things so I don't have to spend so much time on organizing. Yeah, maybe the upkeep is exhausting. I see I'll choose an area. Yeah. Sometimes it helps to do things with another person or maybe have someone on the phone while you're doing something as a distraction. When helping someone move, we gather like items together. Yeah. I see a question. What if the person has other addictions, for instance, a drug addiction, along with the issue of acquiring items? I guess it depends on this person's goals. Sometimes it really, what is the most important to them? And we might think it's important that they clean, sort, organize, discard items in their home, but it might not be important to them. And so, how do we build buy-in? How do we build motivation? How do we explore if this is even a priority right now? Or maybe if this person is actively working on, building coping skills to navigate substance use. I see another comment. I think deciding which room they want based on another goal. Yes, I love that. Like cleaning the bedroom for a good night's sleep or the dining room so they can sit to eat. Yeah, we often talk about like even thinking about someone who wants to cook. If they have items on top of their stove and inside their oven and they want to bake something, chances are they're not going to be able to bake something unless they take out all those items and move those items. So helping them again build that motivation to recognize, yeah, in order for me to begin even thinking about cooking, I'll have to probably remove some of these items or organize or sort them in a different way. I got a shredder because I used to be afraid to throw away my mail, so I had bags of mail everywhere. I took the bags to a shredding place and then got my own. My mail gets shredded when it arrives if I don't need to file it away. Shredder takes less space than bags of old mail. Love that. Yeah. So maybe the fear of what might happen to my mail if I throw it away was outweighing the initial reason to let it go and found a solution, the shredder. Now I've got less space and a functional way to let go of this item. Great, thank you for sharing that. Oh, I see summer, winter, spring, and fall, tubs for each so they can be put away and pulled out easily. Then it allows a thought process other than things, but rather it is seasonal things, and it helped to prioritize a little easier. Love that. And making them clear totes so they can still see what they have. I use that for myself. Yeah, the clear tote can be quite helpful unless you're labeling every side of the box, because once you store that box and the label's on the top and you stack another box, you'll have to take all the boxes off of it to see what's on top. So making sure either a clear bin or labeling on top and all four sides, which might be tedious but supportive if you're going to start stacking boxes on top of each other. Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you for that discussion. Our last good guy here is the practice muscle. So, thinking about the idea of not acquiring or discarding can be quite stressful, and we know that it takes a lot of time, effort, and energy to really practice doing that, and actually doing the behavior promotes more of the behavior. Think about that with anything. In order to form a habit, you need to continue that habit over time. So, this can be helpful to start by asking, how long do you spend discarding or sorting now? When I think about if a behavior is also interfering with someone's life, it can be helpful to say, well, how much time do you spend X, Y, and Z? How much time do you spend, let's say someone's experiencing depression, how much time do you spend in bed in your room? Or someone who's struggling with disordered eating, how much time do you spend thinking about food? Or someone, whatever it might be. And so this applies here too. How long do you spend discarding or sorting now? And maybe it's even the opposite, like how long do you spend acquiring right now? Or how much time do you spend um, collecting items? I love to go to um, antique malls and thrift stores, and time, let me tell you, time flies by when you're inside an antique mall with multiple vendors. And I just do a good window shopping, but I could be in there half a day. And so sometimes recognizing like how much time is this interfering with daily life? Am I spending so much time going to antique malls and thrift stores and collecting items that it's now interfering with my ability to function or get my work in on time or see my friends or pay my bills? You start to notice like how much time is getting in that way. But to help someone continue to do that, we want to set a goal for them. And it might, again, be their own identified goal. How long feels realistic for them to spend discarding or sorting items? Maybe they'll say, well, I can do 5 minutes every day, or I can do 10 minutes a day. Or maybe it means like by item, like I'm going to throw out one item a day. And maybe I want to make sure that I keep a picture of that item because it's important to me. Or, maybe I want to make sure that I put a star on my calendar every time I throw out one item. And when I throw out 10 items, I'm gonna go buy myself a nice coffee, seasonal coffee. And so helping this person identify a realistic goal for them, helping them to explore and recognize like if I'm able to build time or increase my time, it will build my confidence and my tolerance. I'll be able to feel more confident in the ability to let go of items. And so helping this person really identify how strong is their practice muscle. Maybe they can tolerate 60 seconds. Maybe it's 30 seconds right now. Maybe it's 5 minutes. Maybe it's 10 minutes. And so helping them to build that practice muscle, again, to build that confidence and tolerance. A lot of this is really distress tolerance. Yeah, I love the example. One drawer or small area at a time. Yeah, it doesn't have to be so big and daunting. It could literally be like a 1 foot square of space. And that's something. Because if we really think about how much, let's say this person has cluttered items in different areas of their home, it's not going to be realistic to start right now and say, I'm going to get this all done by this week. Don't worry, I got this. What if they broke that down, whether by drawer, by area, by room, by item type? Um, maybe it's much harder to think about discarding sentimental items just yet, but maybe it's more doable to discard another item, something less sentimental. And I don't want to name that because it really is up to the person. Okay. So practicing that muscle strength, you might not have Earl has this image of the rock hard abs in the back, and you don't need to have rock hard abs to build your practice muscle strength. But thinking about how we strengthen muscles, literally, as well as the emotional muscle, a lot of it is practice. It's building that emotional resilience and tolerance. So if you can practice for longer amounts of time, invest more time, recognize I might feel really uncomfortable doing this, for 5 minutes a day, but I know that one day I'll be able to do 10 minutes a day, and another day I'll be able to do 15 minutes a day. We want to recognize how change is really like building muscle. Your practice muscle may need strengthening to make faster or more consistent progress. And the more consistently that you practice letting go of or discarding an item, the stronger it becomes. So think about again, those small, regular efforts will then lead to a bigger push. We also want to recognize some of the challenges to addressing clutter. And so sometimes there are things that just get in the way. What are some of those things that we know that might be a challenge to addressing clutter? What things get in the way? I see poor health. Yeah, say a little more about that. How does our health maybe impact? Substance use, yeah. The cost of discarding things, yeah. Physical abilities, fatigue, overwhelm, perfectionism, not an immediate priority, too much stuff. Right. Yeah, absolutely. Time. Yeah, I could be doing something else with my time instead of this. Maybe I don't have any time to do this. So we know that there's challenges across the spectrum for the individuals that we're working with, as well as maybe for ourselves as staff or providers. And then maybe relationships with family. So for individuals that we're working with, there might not be motivation to do the behavior just yet. And think about any behavior. It doesn't have to be cluttering, but we need motivation or buy-in, insight to really start a behavior. There might be high levels of avoidance. Maybe it's easier to say, something else got in the way, or I have this other priority, or I actually, this week I need to focus on my doctor's appointments. I can't even have any extra stress. Or, this week I'm going to program all week, so I just don't have time to even think about letting go of my items. I just don't have a second to breathe, and I'm going to use my downtime to really just relax and watch TV. Sometimes for staff, there's a lack of staff training. Oh, yeah, I can't lift anything. Yeah. I mean, that is a very real thing. Like, people really do struggle with chronic pain, and it might be difficult to lift heavy items. Are there other places that we can start? Yeah, I see an example. I have a client who is physically unable to sort or move items due to depression, infection, and heart or lung issues. She hoarded when she was well, and now it's worse because she can't help now. Yeah. And maybe there's opportunities to provide additional resources. How can we get some additional support for this person? Yeah, maybe seeking out services that can help. And that's one of those other things. This middle column is all about not only lack of staff training, but lack of resources. Maybe there's a quick urgency on staff's part saying, like, no, we have to clean our apartment. It's part of our policy. You have to do this. And the push actually leads to someone like halting back. Yeah. And thanks for naming that. That does sound really difficult. The last part is this strained relationship. And so maybe some of the last time we talked about the bad guys, maybe some of those emotional connections are too strong. Or maybe there's not a chance to uh, set some clear, solid goals. Maybe, the agency is understaffed and it's hard to really set those realistic goals. But a lot of this is really supporting someone and empathizing with the fact that we can help someone understand their behavior. We can normalize their uncertainty about changing and the fear or the distress that it brings up. And we can realistically teach skills that are practical and usable to help them decide where to begin, to help them discard or sort or organize, to help them find other activities instead of acquiring items. But a lot of that comes with the relationship. It comes with building trust and engagement. And we also want to recognize the role of a coach in a team. So, wherever you might be, if you are working at an agency where there's a group of you together, we want to help maintain the focus if this is a person's goal. We want to maybe encourage and cheerlead and offer polite reminders. Notice that effort. Again, every small change matters. And so, highlighting that, paying attention to that, noticing that. When visiting the home, not touching or moving anything without permission. Don't go ahead and say, you know what, I'll take this area, you take that area. It can be really difficult. Again, one, it's such a privilege to be in someone's home, and two, touching their items without permission can be really unsettling, perhaps disrespectful, perhaps anxiety inducing. It can be okay to visit without mentioning clutter. Have a conversation with someone, get to know someone, learn about them and their values and beliefs. Don't work beyond their tolerance level. We can only expect that someone's emotional tolerance can handle so much. So continue to provide emotional support and accompany them on non-acquiring trips. What might it be like to model? Yeah, we can go to the store, but we don't have to pick up something. And not taking over any decisions or telling them how they should feel. Before we go, we are going to put an evaluation in the chat, and we want to just mention our learning application for next time. So we're going to share with you some questions for thinking it through, and we'll explore next month what has been helpful and what's not so helpful. And I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, it can be extra difficult, especially after the death of a loved one. So we will share the evaluation as well as the learning application. If you could take a moment to click that evaluation. For next time, we will provide you with the thinking it through worksheet, and we want you to explore what questions were helpful, what was challenging. Our next meeting will be scheduled for January 22nd. Same link, same time, chapter 6. How did this happen? You are already registered. Again, here is our evaluation. It is in the chat for you all to see. Feel free to scan it here. And we want to just thank you again for your time, attention, engagement, participation. Today's webinar was hosted by DBHR through the Washington State Healthcare Authority. We'd like to remind you that the slides, as well as a link to the recording of this session, will be available to you. You have access to that from today, and we will make sure that you get another copy. And then don't forget to check out the FCS newsletter. And if you're interested in becoming an FCS provider, the resources are there. But again, thank you so much for your time. Wishing you a wonderful holiday season. We look forward to seeing you next month. The presentation is in the chat once more, and thank you all so much again.